So now, let us start with the first keynote seminar. Please welcome our facilitator of this session, Dr. Valerie J. Dr. J is one of the steering committee members of this conference. She also represents the Faculty of Education, the University of Hong Kong. Dr. J, please.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. How are you? Great. It's nice to meet you right here, and this is also my honor to introduce the very first keynote speaker, Dr. Aprille Ericsson, aerospace engineer who holds many firsts in this very first keynote seminar. Dr. Ericsson is distinguished by many firsts in STEAM and STEAM education. She's the first African-American woman to receive a PhD in engineering from Harvard University and at the NASA Goddard Space Flight Center. She is also the first person of color to receive the Washington Award from the Western Society of Engineers. Dr. Ericsson holds many awards, such as the Top 18 Women Who Will Change the World awarded by the Women's Network. Dr. Ericsson loves to speak to young people and has inspired them by many means, such as providing mentorship herself and creating an email pipeline for underrepresented groups in STEM disciplines. As an outstanding scientist, engineer, and educator, Dr. Ericsson aims high and always encourages others to live towards the dreams. She shares her findings in America, Canada, Germany, South Africa, Mexico, and now coming to be in Hong Kong. With these great achievements, it's wonderful for us to have the first of many here in the first Ocean Park International STEAM Education Conference to deliver the first keynote seminar on putting the arts in STEAM. Welcome, Dr. Ericsson.
Well, good morning. First of all, I wanted to tell the coordinators, in particular Andrew, if he's in here. I haven't seen him much today, but we've been chatting and going back and forth for the last 6 months to get me here, and he works very tirelessly. He has a wonderful staff, and you guys have just been great hosts. I really appreciate the invitation. This is my first time to Asia, and I could not think of a better way to do it with the first time of having a STEAM conference in Hong Kong. I have my title here is putting the A in STEAM because we often think of it as STEM. So let me begin. Showing. There we go. Perfect. So let's start off with what is STEM? STEM versus STEAM are the first two topics that I'll talk about. So I thought we should really be very clear about what that A is for arts, because it's often interpreted in many different ways, and people think of performing arts or being artistic. But I wanted to point out that in that first definition here, the expression or application of human creative skill and imagination. Now, of course, we typically think of as painting of sculptures or music and dance, but I really wanted us to focus on being creative and innovative. That's the things that I think that arts allows us to sort of pull from within. I like how I pose this because when it comes to art, sometimes it doesn't matter how good you are. It's just what the feeling that it brings when you create something. So traditionally, we often have forgotten the arts, and my fellow colleagues in the arts and humanities, I think they feel a little left out. So we're not going to leave them out anymore because we realize that we collectively need all of the parts and pieces together to make us well-rounded individuals, and in this case, focusing on scientists and engineering. I also wanted to reflect a little bit here on something that was said in one of our board meetings. I sit on the National Academies of Science and Engineering and Math, and I am in the committee and board for higher education and workforce. And a colleague said, I don't understand why I'm paying all this tuition for my daughter to take arts when she's majoring in engineering. Now, as a parent, I could understand that reflection, but I know personally that it makes us quite well-rounded. I think that we have to remember that when we have the opportunity, as Steve Jobs says here, it's in Apple's DNA, technology alone is not enough. It's technology married with liberal arts that yields us the results that make our hearts sing. I really want to reflect on my own students. And I've been a teacher from kindergarten all the way through the university level. When we think about a student creating something like the posters we see over there today, or creating anime, or an avatar for a game, or an app, you really have to think through this more than just in a logical, scientific manner. We want to entice, we want to encourage, we want people to be interested. So there's some storyboarding, there's some planning, and all of this pulls together in an artistic way. We're going to look at things like details and color and texture and symmetry and balance. I think that we must say to students, it's an opportunity to be creative and have fun. And it's really important to realize that we do have research findings that say that art should be included in the science classes, and you're going to see some of the ways that some of the students I work with do it in a very fun way. Now, I think many of us may know Mark Cuban, the businessman, and he was making some discussion about the value of liberal arts, and he said here, a lot of coding is eventually going to be taken over by artificial intelligence. And then 20 years from now, if you are a coder, you might be out of a job. Wow, that seems unusual to say because we say how important it is for people to code. But if you look at how he continues, it says, because it's just math. Okay, that's the way he posed it. We know it's more than just math. It's usually some sequencing of events and methodical thought process that goes into coding. But he says here, so whatever we're doing with the AI intelligence, someone's got to know that topic. So it's more than just coding. You need to know the basis of it. And in this case, he's saying if it's AI to emulate Shakespeare, in this case, then that person better know Shakespeare. It made me reflect on something that David Vasco here talked about, how he went to a university to look into a project he was doing with AR, augmented reality. And unusually so, he found so that he wasn't in the engineering department. He was actually in the art department. I had a similar opportunity. I was visiting the New York University Tisch School of Arts. And we were talking about partnering with them as a NASA team and having students come on board to help us with publicizing the things that we do. They are uniquely posed in that School of Arts with their new media and games network. They call it Magnet. And a new technology hub with 3 Tisch programs: the Clive Davis Institute of Recorded Music, the Interactive Telecommunications and Interactive Media Arts programs, and then they have a Center for Game Design. Now I'm hoping we're going to get the slides back up because this next slide had beautiful artistic pictures of actually at my alma mater at MIT. And my daughter and I were visiting the Strata Center, and they had these beautiful pictures of biological. I'm going to try and do it again. right? Beautiful pictures. And so for something like this, one is a model in the middle, but then these two biological patterns, I don't think that you would feel the same without seeing this in color and the way that they were able to display it. And it brings a certain value and thought of how powerful such something so small but yet so complex. Without that artistic display, we don't see all of the scientific components that we may be able to digest and to investigate. And then here at my own institution at NASA, we actually decided that we were going to publish art from Mars. And it's such a different environment, but yet you could not begin to understand how different until you see this very beautiful display of the terrain of Mars. So I was asked to talk a little bit about examples, and I could not think further than my own self as to how the things in my life have actually exposed me in a STEAM way. Although we tend to focus on STEAM and STEM, I want to say that it's because of my family. We're really well-rounded. My mother is here, and my daughter is here, and she's an educator as well. But from history and from learning how to draw and also being athletic, all of that was imposed. And I began to go ahead and impose it on the next generation. And so up there, you see it on the very far, your far right, was our first family STEAM camp. And I had 17 kids in my house for 1 week. Can you imagine that? I must say, though, when I started off very young, I had no idea what I would want to do. And so if you look at the things that were interesting to me and the things that I was exposed to or I thought that I could progress forward in as I got older, they're very varied. The one ironic thing is there's nothing sort of technical up there. I think that that is really important when we talk to students about entering a technical career, that they focus on and have the opportunity to experience a variety of experiences. So like this facility here, the Ocean Park International, I took the opportunity to explore the various facilities in Brooklyn, New York, from the parks and the botanical gardens and the Children's Museum, the public library. All of those played a very big impact and role on shaping me as a human being. I thought it would be amiss to not give you guys a taste of what it is in my life and what I actually do, because while this group here tends to focus on things down below, I tend to look at things up in the heavens. I don't hear sound. Well, this is what happens when you're the first speaker, right? So all the kinks skip. There we go.
We have a funny little clip, I call it my theme video. You know, every good hero needs a theme song, right? Seeing all of the different instruments and missions that I've been a part of or solve huge problems is never something that I started out to do here at the NASA Goddard Space Flight Center. I started off doing attitude control systems. We don't say spacecraft having a bad day, but really position and location in space. And so often people will call me a rocket scientist because I built and designed systems to control our spacecraft. And then moved into instrument management. I'm really the taskmaster in helping people meet the criteria that a scientist needs to create the cool stuff that you see around us. I was born in Brooklyn, New York. I grew up in Bed-Stuy. as we say, s.t.A.e.m, do or die. I liked math from the very beginning. I played team sports. I still continue to do softball. My comic book favorite is the Cape Crusader. They used their brain and I could too. I moved to Cambridge, Massachusetts for high school. I applied to MIT and got in. But when I graduated from MIT, it was the year of the first shuttle disaster. And that was really hard, and jobs really weren't available at NASA. I went back to school. When I graduated from Howard University, I was the first African-American female to get a PhD in mechanical engineering at NASA Goddard Space Flight Center. We have 4 science disciplines: helio, earth science, astrophysics, and planetary science. I've worked all different phases of the mission. One of my favorite projects is a lunar reconnaissance orbiter, because when I was in first grade, we got to see the men go to the moon. It's a satellite that is basically using a laser, what we call a laser altimeter, to measure distances very accurately. You point the laser altimeter down to the surface and then bounce very quickly back up into your detectors and measuring that time in the distances. We're able to create 3-dimensional maps of the moon, so you can see the very small craters down to 3 centimeters in resolution. That is very impactful when you begin to think about traveling in space. You need to know where you're going and where you're going to land. The James Webb Space Telescope is our next huge telescope, and we're hoping that it will actually take that same type of science and data that we've been collecting for Hubble and take it to the next level. It's 28 years in the making. So when they started the concept, the technology did not even exist. When we're looking at things in space, but we're looking way back in time, we're just finally getting the light. Different frequencies of light give us different clues. Infrared happens to be one of those spectral bands of light. For the James Webb Space Telescope would give us some insight as to how quickly Milky Way is expanding, or even how long ago the universe was born. So for myself, this new position that I am, it's really being strategic about what NASA should be doing for the future. We may use sensors that look down at the Earth right now, but they may serve a purpose for us in the Martian environment or moon environment. As we try to figure out how to live on this big blue marble, we're going to succeed by working together. Diverse ideas spark innovation. They collide and create great solutions.
Cool job, right? Yes, I love my job every day. So let's focus on the future, and many of the students here are the future. I'm going to give you a little bit of insight into some of the things that we do back in the States. And I'm using my daughter as an example. So she was like, "Mommy, there's a lot of slides in me." And I'm like, "Yeah, you're a really good example of how we've been infusing STEM and pumping it down her little brain every day." Ariel says that she potentially wants to be an OBGYN that delivers babies in space. And so her future involves all of the different things that you see there. So fast forward, and here she is today. Yes, she's a dancer too, but she's also the top math student in her school. So Ariel has been doing STEM education in her Langdon Education Campus, which at the time it went all the way up to the 8th grade. A while into her career at the school, they began to decide that DCPS was going to make some changes. So you'll see that it went from a STEM school to a STEAM school. Ariel had the opportunity to actually speak with me at a White House conference when she was in first grade. And this was her speech. She's there with Valerie Jarrett, the senior advisor for President Obama. And when she met Dr. Jarrett, she said, "Can I take a picture with you?" And she said, "Yes, I'm here for you," because the conference was on the marginalization of girls in STEM. And you can see her little speech there. She talked all about the things that she liked to learn, the fact that she liked to use the computer and use the smart board and play with animals and work with the animals. And I'm always really proud of her because she's taken on new challenges and had an opportunity to be a spokesman for some of the other students and young ladies. Now, mind you, when they asked me if she could speak, they thought she was in high school. She was only 6 years old at the time. That transition from STEM to STEAM at times seemed a little forced. It took a while for our institutions to really identify good criteria and ways to really infuse those different disciplines together. As it says here, a mashup. There's kind of like they just kind of threw things together. Well, over time, I've watched it hone and become better and more purposeful in terms of the sharing of information. This lesson was 2 lessons that were provided to me by Mr. Baton, who's Ariel's music teacher. And the first picture to the left is the 3rd grade through 5th grade, and they're learning mathematical patterns through musical notation. And then the much smaller little children who are pre-K through 3rd, they're learning how to identify mathematical shapes through song and movement. So there's an integration of the music, yet they're at task learning about shapes. And do you guys know the hokey pokey? Yes, you put the right foot in, you put the right foot out. Well, they're doing that, and they're doing it with the shapes. And then this is something here that I developed, which is, let me go back. Hopefully it'll do it without the video. Something that as a parent and the PTO president, which is Parents and Teachers Organization, we started something called Hollow STEAM. And it's a time where we kind of celebrate Halloween, but it is with a STEAM theme. And so there's actually a picture of the Ericsson clan there. That's one year when I usually play the mad scientist. And I teach students about electricity. We have hands-on activities. And is the one that kind of was playing with a little bit of noise was a young lady was doing a sensory type of feeling for balls and trying to identify eyes. Ariel's actually been a winner twice over because we have a parade where students have to create their costumes with a STEAM-based costume. And she was a lepidopteris, which is a butterfly specialist one year. And then another year, she was an airplane pilot. Then last year, her best friend, her BFF, won with the skeleton you see there. So we've had a rich opportunity to bring families out at night. They get to do hands-on activities. And then there's one last component where family members can actually decorate their trucks and their cars in the parking lot. And why do kids come out? Because they get candy, right? So they come out to the cars, and we also do a competition, and so it brings the whole family together. Ariel has a bunch of different activities that she does between things that we go out to do. She makes good friends. As you can see down below, one of my favorite books when she had to do a book report on the Mousetronaut, which was a story written by Mike Kelly, an astronaut, about a mouse on board the space shuttle. And as you can see, there's a drawing aspect to that piece. She plays the piano, and she's been doing that since she was 3. So I think all of that has helped with her mathematical skills. And yes, she also not only does tap and ballet, but she's a hip-hop dancer. So why did I talk about all of this? Because experts are saying how important it is to engage and discuss and to be focused on K through 12. So not just thinking about the university level, the high school level, in the case you call secondary, but really starting to be very focused at the K through 12. And this is David Vasco, who's actually the director of advanced technology at Rockwell Automation. And he said he had been studying the various educational programs and felt very strongly that it was important to start this early. Now, I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with FIRST, which is First Lego League, the competition where you do robotics. It's an international competition, but he said he really felt strongly and loves the whole idea behind it. It was actually started by Dean Kamen, if you know the Segway. He's the inventor for the Segway and the insulin pump for children. But he started this, what we call for inspiration and recognition of science and technology competitions. He's voiced, and I agree with him, that the things that students learn, and we saw that today with some of the award winners today of working together and collaborating together, but it goes a bit deeper with FIRST. This year, I was not just a judge, I was a coach for multiple teams. And so there was another aspect that I began to see where teams are almost like creating skits. And they get all dressed up and they play out a role of what they're doing in their competition. This year, it just so happened it was a space theme, living and working in space. And so my own daughter is on one of the teams that I'm lead coach for. And we had our first major competition at Nationals for NSBE, and NSBE is National Society of Black Engineers. We have a student chapter of 130 students. We do First Lego League VEX IQ. We do First Lego League Junior. We also do Math Counts, which is a math competition base. We have Mandarin classes. We have a STEP team. We also have something called Gavel Club, which is like Toastmasters. We do trips to colleges and universities. We have a math coding class. It's called Microsoft Coding Academy. We have a partnership with Microsoft, and that's one of the things that I keep an eye on. And we were able to see quite a bit of growth, such that most of our teams placed well in the competition. And here's their chant, because they actually do sing as part of their cheering each other on and showing teamwork.
Should be told, watch the story unfold. Our rovers on the road, there's no problem in the code. We know we're really bold because we know how to code. Girl code.
So they get excited about coding. And so they actually won in the programming category first place. It's an opportunity for them to shine and to speak in front of judges. They have to do 3 different categories, and they excelled very well. And I think it prepared Ariel as well for her science fair competition. She ended up winning 3rd place at the DC Science Fair in Atmospheric Sciences this year. And so all of this helps to pull in the STEM. And how that occurred, if you look at Ariel's board in 3rd grade, it's kind of plain, right? And then in 4th grade, we started to add more color, and by 5th grade, you can see we jazzed it up and really artistic and really began to blossom. I think all of those things are great for students because they really get into it, but it also allows the judges to see they put the time and effort and the thought processes into it. And then her friend there, Jasmine, again, the BFF, is right in line with her. She did her project on science of slime. Now, I don't know how many people in here have younger children, but slime is the big deal. Like, my house kind of stays a little messy. I see some people nodding their heads. But there's a real science behind it. And I spoke at a school in New Jersey, and they had 100 girls making slime, and they talked about the properties of slime and the chemistry aspect of it, and that's what little Jasmine, but you can see how beautiful and colorful her slime project was. I wanted again to talk about impact, and so here is a school that I actually was watching a movie on Netflix called The Creative Mind. It had several innovators that they were talking to, but they towards the end of the movie, they had a school in Burlington, Vermont, Integrated Arts Academy at Burlington, and it was actually a low-performing school. They decided to revamp the entire curriculum to make it a STEAM-based arts focus. And the thing that they really stressed was that they wanted students to be risk takers, that it was safe to think out of the box, to think in an innovative way, and to think and approach, in this case, you see a math lesson there, approach it with a different perspective than just counting things or thinking of it from a mathematical sense, a traditional sense, thinking it through abstract art. And parents as well as teachers said they saw a blossoming of the children. Their test scores are slowly starting to pick up. And so this was a success that was actually identified in this movie. I also wanted to focus on, this is a young lady who's working on her PhD, Danielle Olson at MIT, and she created a program called Geek, which is actually, it's Chic Geek with a combination of it. But she, through a community programs and partnerships, and I should have said that about the school in Vermont, they used the community partnerships to help to do this and to create programs. She as well, she has a dance program that allows local dancers to come in and to give workshops, but they're also practicing scientists and engineers, and they get a chance to talk to students about their jobs, and so it's a different way of bonding with a mentor. And then she has a 9-month program where she works with the Girls and Boys Club of Dorchester, Massachusetts for middle school, and they get to do field trips, and they have guest speakers, and they do innovation. But it's for students who are comfortable with being artists, yet have some interest in science and technology and math as well. I wanted to kind of do a little bit of higher level thinking. So under the board that I mentioned, the Board of Higher Education and Workforce, we actually initiated a study, and this was actually a study on the integration of humanities and arts with science, engineering, and medicine. As you can see, the theme says branches from the same tree. So the whole idea of that, although we may be in different disciplines, we're actually all still part of the same growth and moving forward. They really looked at trying to identify programs that were very successful and highlighted that throughout the report. You can actually go online to the National Academies and do a free download or pay a fee to have it mailed. But if you're interested in seeing some of the different aspects, I have one that I highlight here. The evidence was really more of anecdotal than something that they could fully measure because of the infancy of some of these programs, but they could definitely see that there was improved written and oral and communication skills for many of the students, and this ranged from high school through some of them were college students. They were able to see the teamwork skills, of course, ethical decision-making, and critical thinking, which is a must. There's also a side of empathy, and that thing that you sort of get, I think, more so with the arts than what we traditionally hear of us science and techie types. But they really wanted to make sure that there were good indicators in improving science literacy, that these skills would help to prepare students for work, life, and civic engagement in the 21st century. So I'm highlighting one here, and there's some observations that they made because they really wanted to connect it back to the educational outcomes, but then for employers, how does this really help? But it said here, an employee survey consistently shows that employees want well-rounded individuals with a holistic education who can take on complex problems and understand the needs and the desires and motivations of others. This young lady actually has a prosthetic limb on. Anika Emmer is using a solution for what they call the flower arm, and Limbitless Solutions is a nonprofit that actually helps produce personal bionics for students or for young people. Are we? Did we just switch over? I think so, because it's not on that screen here. Okay, there it goes. Well, no, it's not. Yeah, okay, so he's up there doing it. Okay, so could you move to the next slide? So This may seem funny to talk about toys, but toys are really important. And they're extremely important. So this is a committee here and they're advocating for the use of toys. Now, if you look down, I highlighted Roger Mellini, who is an astrophysicist and an editor and art science researcher. He co-directs the Art Science Lab in the University of Texas at Dallas and the School of Art, Technology, and Emerging Communications. He actually said that working on hard problems can sometimes only be solved by combining STEM with the arts, design, or humanities. Next slide, please. There was some emphasis throughout the report, and there were several ones that I wanted to highlight. And they talked about working with your hands and growing the brains. It was so nice to see some of the competitors today and yesterday when they talked about the things that they actually were building and creating, an opportunity for them to work together with those skills, the motor skills. But there's something that is encouraged by the toys that encourage these fine motor skills and added benefit for growing the brain. And even stressed, and I remember my mother saying this one time to me when Ariel was counting on her fingers, and I was like, Mom, she's counting on her fingers, and she was like, let her do it, that's a good thing. So remember, it's okay for your kids to count on your fingers, and I think that some of us older people from time to time do it. So this Toy Story here is something that I loved about my daughter when she got her Christmas toys. And playtime is extremely important. It's an opportunity for students to be creative. There's no right or wrong. Yes, as I said, there's no right or wrong, because we can dress up too. Yeah, that's me. Yeah, I'm the Batgirl there. And Ariel is Wonder Woman or Wonder Girl. And she said,
What did you say about those Legos?
Yes.
I got the Bob Legos.
You were singing?
I got the Bob.
So much important that she can't even talk about the bomb Legos. But she's dancing up a storm about Legos.
They're the what?
Bob Legos.
Well, you better tell Uncle Todd thank you.
Thank you, Uncle Todd.
All right.
So I must say to the women in the audience, I'm so happy that they make Legos for girls now. It's an opportunity for our girls to shine and to have something to connect with, but Legos are really cool. It's a chance for you to be confident, take a risk, build something, and it's no right or wrong with Legos unless you're always following the directions. But it's a chance to build confidence. Toys give children a chance to be involved and passionate about STEAM. Mistakes are okay. It's a chance to be collaborative and build social skills when they play with their friends. Taking healthy risks in a playful environment is very important. And I know that sometimes teachers are saying our children are not willing to take risks. But if you want to be innovative, go to the next slide, please, then you need to be able to take risks. Find that being a risk-averse society does not allow us to grow and to come up with new solutions, ways for us to help relate other things together, things that are different, taking on those challenges, and as we say, integrating the arts into STEAM projects. Next slide, please. So we must be open-minded if we want to raise scientists, artists, or successful individuals in general. We must imagine the things they have. It may not have been created before, right? But with allowing kids to play, it could be humming a tune, it could be drawing something, it could be making slime. There's no one way particular to play. Next slide, please. We said keep it simple. I can remember when she was little and I threw the pots and pans out there, right? It's just what a kid likes to do. They just want to have fun. No step-by-step instructions. Sometimes just a few objects are simpler than more creativity comes out. Next slide. I have quite a number of lists, but I'm just going to give you the highlights here for people that are interested. I'll scan through really quickly. We use KiwiCompany.com. It has a monthly subscription, in comes a box, got everything in it, and they go to work. A few examples, and this one I like because it actually integrated convection, and how do you create convection. Next slide, please. Is it stuck again? Can you go to the next slide if you can? There we go. One more, please. There we go. This was actually a spinning snake, and it uses convection. They provide online ability to explain the whole theory and idea behind heat rising that makes the snake spin. Very simple, but yet very important concept. Next slide, please. And then this one here was more about kinetic energy and stored energy and then creating a chain reaction. So there's a part of building it, yet there's an opportunity to see something kind of explode apart, which kids love to do. Next slide. And then NASA offers a lot of different opportunities to share for students. You can go online. From career opportunities to looking at a professional to ambassadors and posters and things that you can make. Next slide. To competitions like similar to the one that you had today, we have one called OpSpark, which is themed around Optimus Prime. And it's an opportunity for grades from 3 to 12 to actually create a spin-off technology based on a theme, a science or technology theme that we give them. Next slide. Lots of different fun activities. I thought this one, next slide, please. The next one is actually an opportunity for families to work together to do planetary type science. We're still stuck. I'm going to keep going. One more. Next slide, and I like one of the spin outs from this is creating an edible model of the sun. Kids love making cookies. And so you can come up with a very cool model of the sun through licorice and M&Ms and icing and that kind of thing. We actually have one of our Helios physicists doing that on center sometimes with students. Next slide. I'm going to stress again how important it is to let children and be risk takers and change makers. And when I say children, I mean all the way through high school. Students think that once they've gotten to that point, that they are no longer a child, but keep the child in you. Next slide, please. One more. So I love this particular website, and it is an opportunity where students are working with astrophysicists. Can you go one more slide, please? Two more, actually. And then Astro Olympics. And I thought this was pretty cool because I saw a Chinese athlete on the very beginning. Go one more and then play the clip. You have to tap it, please.
The key to the Olympics is motion.
Go back one.
How athletes run,
It's playing here.
throw, spin.
So you can't see the images, but they're showing the Olympic athletes. But as you can see here, there are concepts of physics, as well as, I'm gonna try it again. Tap the screen if you can, and it'll start the movie. There you go. So Astro Olympics project explores the spectacular range of science and comparing them to athletic motion.
With the awesome spectacles of the cosmos. The key to the Olympics is motion. How athletes run.
So there's sound with it, but I don't hear it. Let's go to that next slide. So I don't know if anybody can recognize the athletes, but I thought it was kind of cool that we're both showing in the winter sports as well as in the summer sports. in this case. Next slide, please. And then there's opportunities to talk about speed, mass, time, pressure, rotation, distance, all of the concepts that we apply, in particular in the physics domain, but and then the application of an athlete. So, can you go to the next slide, please? So I have often reflected on how important the visions that we get around us influence us in the careers that we consider, and this was one that I grew up with. Yes, I was a Trekkie, and I must say that it allowed me to think outside of the sort of norm of a kid growing up in Brooklyn, and to think about maybe being engaged and involved in space because of Lieutenant Uhura being on the screen. And then next slide. I had no idea, one more please. Yes, that's her. She's a gracious woman. I had no idea about people like this, who we know as the hidden figures. I'm gonna skip this because we're pressed for time, we're almost done. Can you skip this slide? Although it's kind of funny. So engineers, go back one. Engineers have often looked like these geeky guys that you see there, and scientists, but in this instance, we're all talking about sort of diversity. And in this case, we're talking about diversity of careers and topics and the things that we express and work towards. For me, there are other ways that diversity presents itself. Here I am at a largely Asian-dominated conference, an African-American woman sharing the ideas and themes that work across cultural divisions of people. I didn't necessarily think that I would end up in the careers that I have, but when we're talking about working on things like the space station and exploring the depths of the oceans, we need to work collectively together. And so I often have said it takes a partnership of many. Next slide, please. Hit it twice. When astronauts have looked from above, they don't see boundaries, they don't see borders. Okay, you can see the Great Wall of China from space, but in general, you don't see lines that separate countries. Next slide, please. When Gene Roddenberry began this sort of theme of Star Trek, he had a very diversified group of people working across their differences and creating something wonderful and phenomenal like Star Trek, across the heavens and exploring new places. Next slide. I often say that when diverse ideas collide, they spark innovation. So let's embrace arts, science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. I say full steam ahead. Next slide, please. I say thank you for inviting me to the conference, and I hope that it is one of the most successful ones that you have in the future. Thank you.